So I'm gonna give this piece of advice from ChatGPT a C, and I think you gotta do better, ChatGPT, if you wanna come for us piano teachers' jobs. We all know that AI is coming for our jobs.
They took our job!
It's coming for your job, whether you work in real estate, whether you're a truck driver, whether you're a coder, and even if you're a piano teacher.
They took your job!
I'm not sure when this is gonna happen, but I could totally see it happening. I've already heard of people having robots teach different classes in different places in the States. It actually is happening. It's kind of crazy. I thought I would kind of test ChatGPT and rate some of the advice that it gives. So what I did was I went to ChatGPT and I typed in a prompt of what are some pieces of advice that most teachers give to piano beginners. And I thought I would rate each of these pieces of advice so that we can kind of judge ChatGPT's ability to teach piano. So you know the drill. S tier is the highest. Then we go A, B, C, D, E, and F as far as how good this advice is. And let's get started. First one that it gave is actually amazing advice. It says, start slow and steady. Don't rush. Accuracy and control matter more than speed. In the beginning, I would say that it still matters actually when you're learning really difficult pieces that you've been playing for decades. You always want to start slow. You always want to make sure that your accuracy is good. So I'm going to give this piece of advice an S tier. I used to joke that when I was teaching, 50, 60 private piano lessons every week, I was like, man, I could just get a recorder to just say, slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down. And people would be like, this slow? No, not slow enough, not slow enough. I feel like I'm always telling my students to slow down. And I got frustrated because I felt like I was repeating that over and over. So that is something that you hear. Make sure when you're practicing that you go slow enough that you can play everything accurately and then over time, you're gonna want to speed that up, obviously. So here's the second piece of advice. Practice every day, even if it's just 10 minutes. Now, you're probably gonna think that I think this is actually the best advice and all that. I actually don't think so. I actually would rather have somebody sit down, and I guess it depends kind of where you are. If you're like a kid starting out, this is good advice because short attention spans, there's a lot of easy kind of quick wins as people learn in the beginning. As you get more complicated and you're playing more complicated music, I'd rather have somebody really have a couple hours of focused practice and then skip a day than have like an hour and an hour. I think that sometimes like having more time in a flow state. The reason that I think this is it takes a certain amount of time to get into flow state, right? And a flow state is where you're focused, it's just above your difficulty level. There's a lot of research on this, and you wanna get there because that is the best place learning and that's where you make the most progress. And they've said that it takes 20, 30 minutes to get into a flow state. So I actually think it's better advice to really like sit for long periods. If you're just starting out and everything's overwhelming, then I think that can be good advice for certain people. But if you're really starting to take piano seriously, I would go for longer periods of time so that you can be more in the flow state as you practice. So I am gonna give this a C rating, or the C tier. Use the correct finger numbers. Super, super important. And the more complex your music gets, the more important this becomes. The only thing I would say is sometimes people get like so hung up on which fingers they're supposed to use. I teach a lot of beginners with Piano by Pictures, right? It's geared toward beginning students that don't know anything about the piano. And I actually, in those beginning stages, don't focus a lot on fingering because I just want them to get started. I just want them to get playing. But of course, if you're learning a Bach fugue or if you're learning a Beethoven sonata, if you're learning anything that has any level of difficulty, it's really important that you have your fingerings mapped out. And then after people get started in Piano by Pictures, we do go over fingerings because it is important. It does make things easier. And so it is important. So I'm gonna go ahead and give this an A tier. Okay, next piece of advice from ChatGPT is sit properly at the piano. They say good posture and hand position help prevent tension and injuries. Yes. Especially if you're playing for long periods of time, it's really important that you sit correctly. You can get, when I was like, I think a freshman in college and started playing a lot, 4 or 5 hours a day, I would get pain in my wrist. And it took some time for me to learn how to physically approach the piano. So I would say that it becomes more important, like posture and this type of stuff, the more that you play. So if your intention is to become a professional musician, I would say that this is something to focus on. If you're not, if you're just a beginner, like most of our students in Piano by Pictures are, I would definitely get set right, get centered on the keyboard, try and, all the good things for, have your fingers curved, all the good things for posture, but I would probably wait to get into like all the nuances, just because I could see people who are beginning to really like focus on that and avoiding wrist pain. And you really have to play a lot to get that wrist pain and to like kind of mess up your body. So I'm gonna go ahead and give this piece of advice from ChatGPT a B. Next piece of advice, count out loud or use a metronome. Rhythm is more important than playing the right notes. I agree with that for sure. Rhythm is more important than playing the right notes. So I actually always use this example to show rhythm being more important. So here's a Christmas song. Which Christmas song is this? Probably don't know. Probably can't do it. Okay, now what Christmas song is this? And you're probably saying Jingle Bells, right? It's a really recognizable rhythm. Well, what I just did was with Jingle Bells, I played the rhythm without the notes, and you were able to guess what piece it was. In the other example, when I played the notes, I played notes without the rhythm. I played this. And if you were to play it in rhythm, and those are the same notes. So rhythm is really, really important, and people kind of actually think the opposite when they start playing. They worry so much about the notes that they often sacrifice rhythm. So I do think, I would say that's an S. Now, the piece of advice that it gives to count out loud or use a metronome, I think that it depends. If you're just starting to play, I think that it gets overwhelming for students to count out loud and use a metronome. And so I would do that. I mean, I still do it pretty early on in the education, especially the counting out loud, because even if they're not strict, like a metronome makes you be strict, it does help you kind of conceptualize where the beats are in certain parts of the measure and all of that. So I do think this is good advice. I do use it a lot, but I don't think it's quite the S tier, the slow and steady. I think everybody needs to play slow, right? But I'm gonna go ahead and give this piece of advice from ChatGPT an A. Next piece of advice from ChatGPT is break music into small sections. Don't tackle the whole song at once. Master a few bars at a time. This is fantastic advice. So many people just get overwhelmed when they try to learn an entire song all at once. Actually, in Piano by Pictures, because of this, we break things down a lot. We do a lot of hand separate works. We do a lot of work phrase by phrase for both the right hand and then both the left hand. So I actually think this works whether you're a total beginner and you're learning like a simple hymn or a simple like children's song in the beginning, or if you're learning super advanced classical music. I think it's super important that people break things into small sections that are a little bit more bite-sized and that they can manage. So this one from ChatGPT is the next one that is getting an S tier as far as advice. Next piece of advice from ChatGPT is listen to the music. Don't just play it. Use your ears to guide your hands and build musical expression. Okay, interesting. This one seems like a little bit woo-woo to me. I'm not quite sure what this robot is trying to get at. I do know that I think there's like a famous story of Debussy's daughter where she heard somebody play. I can't remember who it was. Somebody's playing the piano and she's like, "Oh yeah, Dad used to play that piece." And they're like, "Oh, like how does my playing compare to her dad, Debussy's her father?" He's like, "Well, he listened more." I do think as you get into like the more advanced playing, that like really like listening and really getting your ear into what's going on and how you're phrasing things, what your tone is like, what your projection of your melodies are like, kind of the balance between the right hand, all that kind of stuff. It becomes super, super important. For a beginner, I would not worry about it, honestly. I would play. The most thing I do with Piano by Pictures people is we get louder and we get softer. We kind of like phrase thing, call it hairpinning in like band music or orchestra or something like that. Like putting hairpins on it, get louder and then get softer. That's kind of usually the most that I will get into. Becomes a lot more complex than that and a lot more nuanced and as you get more advanced. So I'm gonna go ahead and give this piece of advice from ChatGPT. Although it is good advice, it is only really good advice for more advanced players. So I'm gonna give it a B. Next piece of advice from ChatGPT is look at the music, not your hands. parentheses too much. Train your fingers to feel their place instead of always relying on your eyes. So I think this is good advice. This is something that we try and have students do, even in sort of beginning stages, to keep their eyes on on their music. I think it kind of teaches an ability to sort of like feel around. You know, like we use our eyes, we use our hands, we use kind of all our ears, all of our senses when we're, all those senses at least, when we're playing the piano. And so that kind of, I think, helps people with like spatial recognition, like judging how far apart the notes are. And that's super useful. I would say that this is not something like slow is something that we always focus on, right? Playing slow are always pieces of advice that we give. And this, I'd say, comes up, but not quite as much as some of the other ones. So I'm going to give this piece of advice from ChatGPT a B tier. Next piece of advice from ChatGPT is mistakes are part of learning. Don't stop every time you mess up. Keep the flow going. So I would say that this kind of depends on what the context is. If you are performing, don't stop. That is like the worst sin that you can make, is like stop and try and go back. Once you've made the mistake, it's over, right? This kind of goes back into the rhythm being more important than the notes. You can miss notes all the time, but you want to keep the flow of the music going if you're performing. Now, if you are practicing, this would kind of, I think, go back to the advice of breaking things into small sections. If you keep making a mistake in a certain part, that might mean that you need to isolate that section. First, you isolate that mistake, and then you isolate the spots around it. In that regard, I think that maybe that's not good advice, right? It depends on if you're practicing. And I'm always very careful on how I'm categorizing what I'm doing. If I'm doing a run through, then I will not stop, right? I will just go through. It's like, let me just see how this is in my fingers, how it is in my brain. Like, what would happen if I perform this right now? And I will keep going. And then I'll go back and I'll spend a lot longer periods actually of time stopping frequently to fix little things. And I think this advice, that advice works for advanced players if you're playing something big, and if you're playing something, just your first song ever. It's okay to like go over one little tiny part over and over. That is going into the small sections. So I'm going to give this piece of advice from ChatGPT a C. And I think you got to do better, ChatGPT, if you want to come for us piano teachers' jobs. And the last piece of advice from ChatGPT that we'll go over is have fun and play songs you like. Motivation is key. Choose music that excites you, even if it's simplified. I 100% agree with this. One of the complaints that led to Piano by Pictures was that when people start learning piano, they don't want to learn kid songs. They want to actually learn music that they want to play. And that is what Piano by Pictures does. We skip traditional sheet music and kind of go straight to the notes and use songs that you already know so that you intuitively know the rhythm. And we play songs that you like and that you want to learn. And because of that, it gives people momentum to continue learning and continue enjoying the piano. So motivation is key. You do have to play to play. You have to play to learn how to play and sit down at the piano. And the more motivated you are, the more looking forward you are to the music that you have picked, the better you will generally get. So I always tell people that in our programs. I want them to pick a song that will fit their level. If they're just beginning, I wouldn't start with something difficult, but I want them to pick something that they like. I think it's super important. So the robot wins on this one. And for the last piece of advice, which was have fun and play songs that you like, is how they worded it. I'm going to go ahead and give this an S tier. It is going to be interesting to see what happens with this AI revolution in the next 5, 10, and 20 years. Who knows if most people will prefer to learn to play the piano to go to a school that has robots. Maybe those robots are good listeners, are better teachers. I don't know, but I know that it's getting better, but I still think, at least for now, that there is a place to study with a piano teacher. I will say too, this in closing, one of the things that I love about Piano by Pictures is we take technology, we teach on the internet, we teach in our membership, we teach via video lessons, a simple method, which is the Piano by Pictures method. But we also have the human element to it. We have several teachers who work with students in our program all the time. We hold live events. And if learning the piano is something that you have always wanted to do, you can kind of get what I think is this perfect combo of technology and then the human interaction in Piano by Pictures. And if you want to know the best place to get started, we've created a roadmap for you to learn how to play the piano. You can click learn more. You can grab a few of these copies. It's all free, and we would just love to help you learn how to play the piano. So Thank you guys so much. Happy practicing, and I will talk to you soon.